What is up YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, as promised, I'll be showcasing you guys a whole series of virtual world combos and test hands, so make sure you watch right through to the end if you want to learn as much as you can about virtual worlds. Throughout this entire video, I'll be using the same identical deck list I showed you guys in my last deck profile video, so if you haven't already, make sure you go check that out. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump straight into some combos. Okay, so for combo number one, what you require is your Kirin, your Yugioh, and any two random discards. Now, this will be a recurring theme with a lot of these combo hands that you do require additional discards, but in most cases, obviously, that's fine because you're not opening two cards, you're opening 5, plus any additional draws you get from Desires, plus any additional draws you get from your mainline combo. So honestly, don't worry too much about it. So let's get straight into this combo. You begin by normal summoning your Yugioh, and then activating Lily, targeting Yugioh, sending your Chuchi and your Qinglong. We'll then activate Qinglong to add ourselves a Lulu, and that's where our first random discard comes into play. Count the summons for this combo because that is important. We'll then go Lulu, target Lily, sending the other trap, and then adding ourselves Kowloon. It's very important that you do not activate Kowloon yet, and that is because we want to keep it to trigger Zorkin. This applies to a lot of combos. Be very aware of what spells or traps you have in hand that you can set, and make sure to hold them until Zorkin has been used. We will then activate our Chuchi to raise the level of Lulu by 3, making it level 6, and then with Lulu and Kirin, we can special summon our Zorkin. We can now set our Kowloon and trigger Zorkin to summon Crystal Wing. Then we can activate the Kowloon to set the Chuchi to our field. And then to finish off the combo, we will activate Xuanwu, summoning out the Lulu, and that's where the last discard comes into play. With the Lulu and the Yugioh, we can synchro into the Vermilion Dragon, and then activate Vermilion Dragon to fusion summon into Kaliga. So with a very simple hand of Yugioh and Kirin, we gain access to a great end board. This is probably one of the best ones. Granted, we don't have excellent follow-up, but we still do have the Monster Lock and a live Chuchi, plus one additional card in hand, which obviously we would have had had we considered a 5-card starting hand. So that's it for combo number 1. Moving on to combo number 2. Okay, so for combo number 2, what we are opening with is Kowloon Lulu, which is the hand we knew and loved when VFD was legal, and any additional card to set. Now you see Imperm here, but it could really be anything, and we do draw in this combo, and we also have an additional 5th card if we're starting, so 90% of cases we will see something to set. So to begin with this combo, we start by activating Kowloon to access our Chuchi. Now we have a Lulu target, we can then go Lulu targeting Chuchi, setting Qinglong and adding Yugioh. We can then go Yugioh target Lulu or Chuchi, doesn't really matter here because we're going to send another Qinglong. Very important to send a second Qinglong here so that we have another one for follow-up in turn 3. The follow-up in this combo is going to be much stronger than in combo 1 because we both have a Yugioh in end phase to add back our Lulu and a Qinglong search for next turn, which is very good. Next up, we will synchro summon Stardust Charge Warrior, getting us a random draw. So in the event that we still hadn't seen any card to set, we now have further access to one. And then after having drawn, and this is very important, we're then going to use our Qinglong to search our Roshi. Now why do you need to use, obviously we need to discard, why draw before Roshi? In case you draw Roshi anyway, then we can search any other extender and keep doing virtual world plays. Next we will go Roshi targeting Chuchi, sending Nian of course, and that will allow us to special summon Yugioh and then trigger Nian effect to summon itself out. We can then special summon using the Roshi and the Stardust Charge, the Zorkin, setting our Imperm, triggering Zorkin to summon Crystal Wing, and then lastly we can synchro summon for the Muddy Mod. Now here, if you do not have access to any further extenders, do not use Nian effect because that will mean that you only have one banished virtual card, meaning your Chuchi isn't live. In this case, I will leave Nian as is. And then summoning the Muddy Mod, we can fusion summon using itself and Zorkin into the Kaliga. Now the great thing about this combo is that in the end phase, the Yugioh will trigger to add the Lulu back to our hand, and we also have a Qinglong ready for turn 3 to search whatever else it might be that we need to ensure that we put game on board as soon as possible. So that's it for combo number 2, moving on to combo number 3. So combo number 3 is a route that is arguably one of the most important to have in your toolbox as a virtual world player, because it turns seemingly unplayable hands such as this hand into full combo. So for this hand, all you require is Kirin plus Qinglong and any card to set, which again in this case is going to be Imperm, and any random discard. So this is the Vermilion Dragon mech route that was popularized when VFD was legal, and this route can still access a lot. So the way you play it for the current combo line is by activating Qinglong and then going Kirin targeting Qinglong. This is very important. You must send Zhuanmu and you must send Lulu. No other two targets work. We will then activate Zhuanmu to summon Lulu, and this is how we begin the Vermilion Dragon mech line. We can then synchro summon using these two into Verm effect, banishing the Lulu to pop itself. And then you might be familiar with this. Obviously, Vermilion will trigger to add our Lulu. So now we went from not having any potential search to having Lulu, arguably the best card in the deck. We can then go Lulu targeting the Qinglong, sending Chuchi to add Gigi. We can then go Gigi targeting Lulu, sending a Qinglong. We can then, and this is very much like to combo number 2. In fact, it is identical. We can then go Stardust Charge Warrior, getting us a draw. Again, same reasoning. We want to get the draw first, see if we draw into the Roshi that we're going to search anyway. But again, for the purpose of this combo, suppose we do not see the Roshi, we can activate the Qinglong to ensure we get access to it. That will get us the Roshi, and again, this combo is in a sense self-contained because the draw we got from Stardust Charge, suppose it's a dud, we can discard it. We can then go Roshi targeting Qinglong, sending on Nian. That will special summon our Gigi, and of course our Nian as well. And then from here, the combo is very, very straightforward. You should know what I'm about to do at this point. I can go those two into the Tzolk'in, set a card, Tzolk'in effect. And then lastly, we can synchro. Here you can trigger Nian to reset a card. Doesn't really matter which, probably Qinglong because that's something good to have in play, but I won't do that. Of course you should. And then lastly, we can fusion summon using Muddy Mud and Tzolk'in into Kaliga. Again, for this combo line, seeing as you did trigger your Nian this turn, your Gigi, you can add back the Lulu in the end phase, which is very nice. And so yeah, that's it for combo number 3. Now, a theme you may have seen with combos number 2 and 3 as opposed to combo number 1. Combo number 1, if I didn't mention it, does play through Nibiru. You might be looking at these combos and saying, yeah, great, you're drawing a card, you're making this sick end board, you have that follow-up, but you're walking blind into Nibiru. Now, for this specific combo, I argue that if you see a hand like this, with just Kirin and Qinglong, you have two options. You either don't do anything, because even going into a Shenshin control route would still put you under 5 summons, so you literally do nothing, or risk it and go for this. I think risking it, considering what we're potentially ending on, is much better than just doing nothing and letting your opponent game you either way. As for combo line number 2, I think that line is, in 90% of cases, if you feel safe enough to resolve it, is just better. Because you're getting follow-up in Lulu in hand and end phase. You're getting follow-up in a Qinglong in grave. You are getting an additional draw. It is just a lot more explosive and nets you a lot more advantage if you feel safe enough to resolve it. So that's it for combo number 3. Moving on to combo number 4. Okay, so for combo number 4, you require a Nian, a Gigi, and again, any card to set, plus a random discard. Now, this combo is quite unique in the way it gains access to your virtual world cards, and you'll see that in a moment. And I'll explain why I don't particularly like this combo, but I still think you should be aware that you can do it. So we begin by normal summoning on Nian, and then we go Gigi targeting Nian, sending Qinglong. We then activate Qinglong to get access to Lulu, and this is where the discard comes into play. We then go Lulu effect targeting either, doesn't matter, sending the Zhuanmu, very important that you send Zhuanmu, and adding Kowloon. This time we will trigger, we will activate Kowloon straight away. We'll activate that Kowloon and go into Chuchi. Very important that you Kowloon first, because next up we will be synchro summoning the Stardust Charge. You want to make sure that you don't just randomly draw into a Kowloon, a Chuchi, that's not great. Anyway, we will draw Stardust Charge, and that gets us a random draw. This draw will, for the purposes of this combo, function as the discard fodder for Zhuanmu. We will special summon Lulu, and that will trigger Nian to special summon itself out, and that gets us the discard. Here is the part of the combo that I don't particularly like. We will use Chuchi to target itself shuffling these two into the deck and popping itself. Now, what did this do? You're thinking, well, you're just going minus, but the reality is that you're kind of not, because this way you've now put a Chuchi in grave. Now, again, the reason I don't particularly like this is that putting Chuchi in grave immediately means you don't have that recursive disruption that just keeps putting pressure on your opponent and also keeps recycling your resource. But if you're going in against a heavy combo deck and you realize this is all you have in hand and you'd rather go for Crystal, Kaliga, which is very difficult for them to break, as opposed to a weaker board. I say weaker, but again, not a extremely difficult to break lock board. This is a viable route. Next up, we will go Chuchi to raise Lulu. Very important that you raise Lulu, not Nian. You cannot use Nian to special summon Zolkin, because Nian is banished when it leaves the field if it becomes a tuner. Zolkin requires that its materials are sent to graveyard. So now that Lulu is a level 6, we can indeed special summon Zolkin. Again, our random set, triggering Zolkin to summon Crystal, and here we can synchro summon for the Muddy Mud. In this case, I think it is very safe. It's a good idea to trigger your Nian to shuffle your Chuchi, because otherwise you just lose access to it. And it also increases the probability of you getting access to it later in the game. And obviously, to finish off, we will use Muddy Mud to fusion summon into Kaliga. Again, for this combo, seeing as we did activate the GG, we do get access to our Lulu and end phase, which is nice. And again, we are ending on this staple board. I repeat, this combo isn't exactly the most conventional route. It definitely works. As you can see, I'm ending on this same identical board. You're probably sick of seeing it. But because Chuchi is just such a powerful card, I mean, a lot of decks might not even think it, but a lot of decks rely on a potential normal summon, or maybe not a normal summon, but having some monster on the board. Take, for example, I don't know, it could literally be anything, but a lot of decks just require having that card on field, or even in certain key spots. Suppose you're going against Drytron and they somehow think they can break this board by going into a Zeus. I wouldn't really know how, but suppose they go droplets for 1, negate the Kaliga, they bait the Crystal, and they're going battle phase. They want to make the Nightingale, they want to wipe your board with Zeus. Well, having that Chuchi to pop those level 1s before they make Nightingale makes a lot of a difference. And against like Saki decks, like whatever, Grand Marju, of course, Chuchi comes up as well. So that's it for combo number 4. We'll go into the last combo, which is combo number 5. Okay, so for combo number 5, now I said it was the last one, but I realized there's some other combo routes I'd like to share before getting into test hands for the second part of the video. But for this combo, I'll be showing you, I guess, the best case scenario that this deck can pump out. Now you see this hand, it is a 5-card hand. And what we have this time is a Kowloon, Lulu, any virtual extender. For this case, I'm using GG. Doesn't matter because you're going to search all of them anyway. Imperm, again, the random set, and a random discard. Now, I'll explain why I don't particularly like this combo when we get to the end board. So we're going to start by activating Kowloon, activating Chuchi, and then we're going to go Lulu, targeting Chuchi, sending the Qinglong, and this is where I said it can be any extender. We're going to search Kirin. We're then going to go GG, targeting Chuchi, sending Nian, and we won't activate Nian, although obviously it wouldn't trigger now, but we won't activate it for a while, and you'll see why. We're then going to go Kirin, targeting GG, sending both Xuanwu and an additional Qinglong, so we have follow-up for turn 3. Then we are going to synchro summon into Coral Dragon this time, because as you see, we need the additional tuner. And then again, we want to send Coral Dragon straight away, so we get the draw before we do any further searching. There, Coral Dragon will get us the draw, in case we do draw into, obviously, what we're going to search, which is Roshi. We will then set the random set to trigger our Zolkin, getting our Crystal Wing, and now, suppose we still haven't gained access to our Roshi, we can, of course, search it by banishing Qinglong. And this is where the random discard comes into play. You'll see that we actually need 2 if we want to go for this full route. Next up, we'll go Roshi, targeting Chuchi, sending another Nian. Now you'll think, oh, but you just sent a Nian. Yes, I want to get 2 in graveyard for a very good reason, that having a second one, obviously I'll summon GG, and then Nian will trigger. Having a second Nian means that for turn 3, I have even more follow-up if I want to go into, say, a Break Sword or something to push the game on board. Next up, we will synchro summon using the Nian and the GG. Of course, you will use Nian effect here. Again, I just don't want to have to shuffle things into the deck for the purposes of this combo. And then we will fusion summon into Kaliga. Now, what you can do if you really want to extend this combo further is that you can indeed activate the Zhuangmu to summon out from your graveyard a GG. This is where the additional discard comes into play. And then with the GG and the Roshi, you can actually synchro summon Shen Shen 2. Now, you might look at this board and think, wow, that's amazing. You've got a Monster Lock, a Shen Shen, a live Chuchi. In end phase, you're going to get GG to add back your Lulu. You have another Qinglong engraved to search for turn 3. You have a life Nian. And you're right, this combo does do a lot. So why don't I like it? Well, the thing is that unless I specifically know my matchup, this hand is partly unlikely to happen. Yeah, it can happen. It does happen quite often sometimes. This deck is actually really consistent. But I don't like the fact that I'm having to discard so much. In these draws, I'm obviously keeping these as blanks for the purposes of these combos, but I could easily be drawing into things like Ash, which I obviously want to keep, suppose they break my board. I might be drawing into things like Called By, which I obviously want to keep in hand as well. I don't want to discard that. I might be drawing into follow-up pieces. I don't want to discard that either. So because I'm having to discard everything that I draw in this combo to achieve this end board, I feel like being a little bit more conservative and ending just on the Crystal and Kaliga might sometimes be the safer bet. Now, of course, if you are aware of the combo deck your opponent's playing and you are scared to death that a Monster Lock plus a pop isn't enough, then sure, go for a walking Macrocosmos that can recur itself as well. I don't see why not. But the thing is that going first, Shen Shen is very, very good against combo decks that will require linking off. It isn't particularly good against trap decks turn 1, apart from like Eldritch, because they generally don't care about putting things in grave again in turn 1. They'll find a way to get rid of this if it's really that big of a deal. So this combo feels a little bit too excessive. That said, if you can make it and you feel like going for something very oppressive and potentially safer if your opponent is playing some ridiculous combo, then this is indeed a route that you can take. So that's it for the formal line of combos that end on this board. Moving on to bonus combo, if you like, combo number 6. So for this bonus combo, I'll be showing you a combo route that's a bit different. And the reason I am showing you this is because somebody commented on my last video, thank you. I'll have a flag for that video in this video right now if you haven't seen that yet. But in my deck profile, somebody commented asking how do you deal with trap decks in Virtual World? And my answer to this question is kind of straightforward, kind of isn't. My way of dealing with trap decks is just by getting as many extenders and as much follow-up for turn 3 as possible when going first. I have a lot of means of getting rid of cards on field turn 3. So if I just have all that gas in my hand, I have 20 million extenders. No matter how many floodgates and just purple cards they flip, it's not going to be that much of an issue for me to deal with. And equally, I want to set up a fairly oppressive board that I can't just let them walk over me with. And so that's what I'll be showing you in this combo video. So the starting hand is a Qinglong, Lulu, and this can be any Virtual World name. It doesn't particularly matter. The combo varies a little, but I'll be showing you how to play it with Lili. So we begin by activating Qinglong, and then we're going to go Lulu, targeting Qinglong, sending Nian, and we actually search the Chuchi. We prioritize getting access to Chuchi a lot with this hand. That's why I wanted to show you the combo with Qinglong as opposed to Kowloon, because I want to show you that Chuchi is so important that you should prioritize it, and it doesn't particularly matter because we're going to get access to a lot of names anyway. Next, we're going to go Lili, targeting Lulu, very important to target Lulu, sending Chuchi and Qinglong. We're then going to immediately go Chuchi up the level of Lulu, and this is a precaution I'm taking because of the trap deck matchup. I'm going to go straight into Zorkin. I do not want to risk getting walked over by Nib, so I'm going to go right into Zorkin on summon 3, setting Chuchi, triggering Zorkin, so by summon 4, we already have a Crystal Wing. Next, this is why we need the additional random discard. We're going to use the Qinglong to search our Roshi, and obviously we'll have to discard. And this is where the combo varies quite a bit from what you might expect. So we're going to go Roshi target the Qinglong, and we're actually going to send the GG. Now what's the point of putting GG in grave? Well, you'll see in a moment. We're going to special summon the Kirin, and then with the Roshi and the Kirin, we're actually going to Xyz into M7. Now with M7, very important you do this if you want to go for the full route. We're going to detach Kirin and add GG. So by adding GG, we now access an additional extender, and we get to add back a name in end phase, which just increases our follow-up potential. We're then going to go GG targeting Qinglong. Very important in this case, you send a Zhuangmu, and obviously we can trigger the Nian we sent at the very beginning of the turn. With this Nian and this GG, we can indeed Synchro Summon into a Stardust Charge Warrior. We can go Stardust Charge, Chainlink 1, Nian Chainlink 2, or the other way around. They probably don't have an Ash by this point, so it honestly just depends whether you'd potentially want to draw into any of these two by setting them on Chainlink 2 or the other way around. Doesn't particularly matter. I won't shuffle back for the purpose of this, but you just get a random add. And next, if you want to go all the way for this combo, you can activate your Zhuangmu, summoning your Lulu. That's where the discard comes into play. And then with your Stardust Charge and your Lulu, you can Synchro Summon for the Shen Shen. Now, why is this combo good? Well, of course, in the end phase, as we might have forgotten to do, never forget to do this, you get to add back your Lulu. You're ending on a Crystal Wing Negate. You're ending on a Chuchi Pop. You're ending on a Macrocosmos. You're ending on a Zorkin that cannot be targeted, which can sometimes be sticky to deal with, especially when Crystal Wing is a huge monster, and Shen Shen is an annoying Macrocosmos. You're ending with something to negate a face-up monster if they put anything oppressive, and Ptolemy is probably the most slept-on card in this end board. Now, what is the point of Ptolemy? Number one, as soon as they go end phase, if they didn't put anything on board that we need to bounce with Ptolemy, we can just go Tolly, add GG. We now have 4 virtual names in hand. Two? No, it's 4, because Lulu can target Chuchi to send Qinglong, that's 2 searches, and GG can get ourselves the 4th, because Lulu 1, 2 searches is 3, and GG is 4th. That is a lot of follow-up. All that through a Chuchi, which essentially is a Dynamiscus, because Shen Shen is on board. And M7 also acts as a very, very easy Zeus route, if for some reason that's our last resort. So this is an interesting way to deal with trap decks which might not care too much about your usual end board, and also another combo route to go for. I just wanted to show you how you can combo making M7 turn 1, because I think that's an interesting way that you should definitely be aware of. It doesn't come up so much going into game 1 for turn 1, but it can come up a lot in the late game where you need to recycle pieces from your graveyard. So that's it for the bonus combo. Now we get to the interesting part of the video, and that is test hands. So as for any combo deck, the best way of learning it is to just test. So let's go straight into a first test hand. Now what I suggest you do, if you're a more experienced player, is to pause the video, have a look at the 5 cards I've drawn, and try and visualize the kind of route that you would choose to do given the cards you have access to. Okay, so for the first hand we have a 2-2, a Lili, a Qinglong, a Kowloon, and a GG. Safe to say this hand is pretty insane, so I don't think you'll struggle to visualize a route to choose. But either way, let's go right into it. We're going to begin by normal summoning our 2-2, and then we can go and use our GG targeting our 2-2. We have multiple cards that we could potentially set off Zorkin here, which is really nice. But we're going to go ahead and send a Qinglong. We're going to hold this Qinglong in hand, the Kowloon in hand to set to trigger Zorkin. We're going to go ahead and activate that Kowloon to add ourselves a Lulu. And actually here we have a couple of options. We could go ahead and activate the Qinglong in hand to get an additional search off the Lulu rather than a trap. We could discard the Kirin and not use it at all, which would work. I think we're going to go for that. Let's discard the Kirin. We'll then activate the Qinglong, go Lulu targeting the Qinglong. And here we can do a bunch of things. We could either climb these into a Coral Dragon, get an additional draw. We could equally send a Chuchi here instead of a Zhuangmu, raise the level, and then do that line of play. We can do a lot of things here. But I'll go ahead and send a Zhuangmu. And we'll go for the draw just because it's the greedier play. And you can always tone down how much of what kind of play you're going for. You can always tone that down by a notch rather than going for the full extent of the play. That's why I'll show you the full extent, and then you can select what to do given the scenario. We'll go into Coral Dragon here, and then using the 2-2 and the Coral Dragon. This is why 2-2 is good for the Zorkin build. Like, I know a lot of people hate on 2-2, but 2-2 is nice. We get a draw off the Coral, drawing into Gamma, it doesn't really matter. Now we can set the Kowloon, trigger Zorkin. Again, as you can see, that 2-2 essentially got us halfway to a Zorkin by itself. We could even just raise the level of Lulu and gone for that route instead of going by the Coral Dragon at all. But yeah, don't hate on Tutu. Tutu's underrated, I think. Card's really nice in some cases. It can be terrible, but just like any card in any hand, in any deck can be terrible. And to finish off the combo, we'll go Roshi. We could target the Chuchi, we could target Qinglong, doesn't particularly matter, because what we'll be sending in either case is a Nian Nian. If I could find it. There we go. And then we will summon our GG and of course trigger our Nian Nian. And now you'll see the reason I sent the Zhuangwu early in the combo is because here we do have the option of going one step further, and you need to make that decision now, because depending on that, the Nian will either shuffle back one of the banished cards or not. What am I talking about? You may be wondering. Well, what I'm talking about is we could extend this further and go Zhuangwu to summon out the Nian, the GG, and then use the GG and the Lao Lao to go into Shen Chen. If we were to do that, seeing as we would then have 3 banished cards, we can now afford to go Nian to shuffle back the Qinglong. I'll go for the full extent, seeing as in this case I'm not really losing much by getting the additional discard from the Zhuangwu because my card in hand is dead, to be honest. And then we can go for the Zhuangwu to summon the GG, discarding the Gamma. In this scenario, I think it's fine to go for this route, although generally I'm not a particular fan of it, because if you do have extenders in hand, I'd rather keep those extenders in hand in case my opponent were to break the board. Making the Kaliga with the Muddy Mud, and then we can synchro into our Shen Shen. And as I said at the beginning, the hand was pretty busted. And to top it all off, in the end phase, we also get the add back from the GG. So obviously we'll add ourselves the Lulu. We didn't even need Kirin for that entire combo line, and we have a Shen Shen, Macrocosmos, essentially a Paleozoic Dynamiscus, because we have the 2 banished, and we have a Shen Shen, and the Kaliga lock with follow-up, and we can turn off the Kaliga lock with our Qinglong. So that's all well and good for combo hand number 1. Anyways, for the second test hand, what are we drawing? So we see a Qinglong, a Driver was nice, a Lulu, and an Impermanent Called By. Again, I'll lay the cards out and have a think as to what line of play you would go for. Okay, so we immediately see we have Qinglong Lulu, so that's screaming at us to play that route. We also have an Imperm, so we know we don't need to worry about things to set for the Zorkin. And we also have a Called By, which is nice, and we have a Driver, which in this case will act as very free discard fodder. We'll obviously begin by activating our Qinglong, and then going Lulu, targeting the Qinglong. In this case, we could do a couple of things. We could go ahead and search a Kirin off the Lulu, and then Lulu will send a Chuchi. We can raise the level and go into Zorkin straight away. Then after that, we could go for Roshi, targeting a Qinglong. We could do a bunch of things from that point. Yeah, let's go for that. I think that's an interesting route to display. We'll go ahead and send a Chuchi. This route won't give you the GG. Oh, sorry, no, it will give you the GG add back in hand in the end phase. You'll see how, but it's a little bit different. That's why I want to show it off. And then we'll go the Kirin targeting the Lulu this time, because we've got to put the Qinglong engrave, and in this case we'll also send the Zhuangwu. If I could find it, that would be great. There it is. Now, just to play it very safe, we'll go straight away and raise the level of the Lulu. So our summon 3, we're covered by Called By for any eventual ashes, but our summon 3 is going to be our Zorkin. And then we can set our Imperm to trigger our Zorkin. Don't want to set your Called By because you could still be under, I don't know what hand trap they'd be holding by this point, but whatever. Sometimes your opponent just sleeps and doesn't realize they have cards in hand. Next up, we'll go for Qinglong. See, they might be holding the Ash for this. I don't see why they would, but whatever. We can add ourselves the Roshi. Of course, discarding the best card in the deck, Driver. Sad to see him go. And then we can go Roshi, targeting our Qinglong. And this is a nifty kind of play that you can do. We can actually send a GG. And if you watch the combos, you'll know what route I'm going for here. We're going to special summon our Kirin. And then we can actually use the Kirin and the Roshi to go into M7. And then, yep, we're going to search the GG. As I said, we're going to get access to him either way. We can search the GG. I say search, but it's essentially a search. And then we can go GG targeting the Qinglong to send. We could send a Nian here. I mean, it won't trigger, but doesn't particularly matter, because to summon our final synchro, we will use Zhuamu to summon out Lulu. Here, the cooled by will finally get discarded. Served us well as long as it was needed. We don't particularly need to trigger Nian here. I don't think I will, because I won't be using him to summon out anyway. I could shuffle back a card, but then I'd end up with a dead piece on board. Honestly, your decision. I'm going to choose to leave it in graveyard, so I have it as follow-up for the next turn. Anyways, I will go ahead and synchro summon into the Vermilion Dragon, and then with the Muddy Mud and the Zorkin, I can make my Kaliga. And of course, in end phase, seeing as I did summon GG this turn, I will get that very precious ad back for follow-up. So that was a nifty route. We played right through Nibiru. We had a cooled by in hand all the way. We made our Crystal Wing on summon 4, I believe. We have a Ptolemy, Kaliga. We don't have Chuchi, but we do have an Imperm, and we have follow-up. Now, let's see what the next hand gives us. Hopefully, I don't want to say a bad hand, but maybe a more subpar hand. Less than average. Give us maybe just the one combo piece to work around. Onto the cards. That is indeed a hand of 5 cards, and it's an Ash, a Qinglong, a GG, a Kowloon, and another GG. I mean, honestly, that's perfect. Exactly what we needed. A weird hand to have to work our way around. So again, I'll lay out the cards. You can have a look. And I'll think about what I want to do with this hand. So we have a couple of options with this hand. We obviously have 2 things to set. So we have our Zorkin trigger whenever we need it. We don't particularly need to worry about that. The choice here is whether we go ahead and normal summon GG and then special summon the other GG as well. Then we can search a Lulu, and then we can use Lulu on the Qinglong, sending Chuchi, and then we can do some level raising there. That would take us to summon 4, so Zorkin in that case will be summon 5. So that does play into Nib. We could alternatively go and activate the Kowloon blind, setting the Chuchi, going GG effect, targeting Kowloon, sending Chuchi, Qinglong, and then we could go for a search from there. Honestly, both routes are kind of equivalent. I'll go for activating Kowloon early. This could even be a good Ash bait in this case. Some people do Ash Kowloon. Kind of interesting to Ash Kowloon. In some cases, it's like the be-all end-all. In other cases, you couldn't really care less. Never mind. We're going to go GG targeting Chuchi, sending our first Qinglong. Important that you don't discard the Qinglong in hand now, because now that's the only way you're triggering your Zorkin. Just be aware of that now that if you've chosen to go for this route. We're then going to go for the Qinglong to add ourselves a Lulu. And here we've got to choose what to discard. I mean, you could discard the Ash. I'm probably going to go for that because Ash won't really cover us from anything at this point, and I'd rather keep the Extender in hand. Next up, we can go Lulu targeting the Chuchi, sending, and here we'll get the additional Qinglong engrave anyway, so it doesn't particularly matter that you didn't discard it. And then because I'm greedy, I'm going to go into a Stardust Charge. Let's give the deck a quick shuffle and see what we draw. Again, the draw isn't particularly, doesn't particularly matter. I chose to discard the Ash here because I know I'm going for the full Kaliga board. I know that Ash is useless in that board because I myself am locked out of monster effects just as much as my opponent is. If you fear that you're going against, like, I don't know, a Dogmatica player that might be playing things like droplets and can just turn off your board, and you want to hold the Ash for like a Shadow Fusion or an Adir Servant, that's also a perfectly legitimate decision to make. Look at that, we drew the Roshi. That's really nice. We can go Roshi targeting the Chuchi. We don't even need to search here. Sending the Nian, if only I could find it. And then of course we'll summon out our GG, and the Nian will trigger as well. We can then use the Stardust Charge and the Roshi to go into our Zorkin. See, this is what I mean about like non-linear combos. You couldn't have predicted that you would have drawn the Roshi off the Stardust Charge. We're obviously going to set the Qinglong, to trigger the Zorkin, but you still make your play safe enough such that if in the event that you don't draw specific cards, you can still play the hand out. And then we can finish off by going into our Muddy Mud. I say finish off, but we've got quite a lot more to go because we have a Qinglong Engrave, but I'm going to choose not to... Ooh, banished the wrong way. I'm actually going to choose not to use the Nian here because those are the only two banished I'm going to have. And I'm going to go those two into my Kaliga. The reason why I'm not using the Qinglong Engrave is because I figured I can just leave it there for next turn. And then I have a lot of follow-up in hand because I get the GG add back in end phase and I have a GG in hand that I didn't use. We're ending on a very solid board again. We have a Qinglong to turn off a Kaliga very easily, and we have a live Chuchi. Of course, you could have extended this board, just as with other ones, into an additional Shen Shen, but I'm just trying to vary the combos up a bit so you're not just seeing the same identical thing ending up on field. Right. We draw into a Zhuamu, Itali, Kowloon, Qinglong, GG. Honestly, this hand would have been interesting had it not been for the fact that we literally have everything in hand once again. But you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing. That just goes to show that good deck building and consistent deck lists make you, funnily enough, not brick. And that's nice. Straight away when I'm looking at this hand, I'll lay it out if you want to have a look. I'm thinking that I don't actually need a Roshi in this combo, provided that I put a Nian Engrave. Why? Because I can trigger a Nian without Roshi, just with Itali at any point. So that's the first thing I'm thinking about, which just gets me reasoning about how to play around the pieces I have access to. So I'm going to decide to hold the Itali because I want to go for that route. And I also have lots of cards to set, so I'm not worrying about holding the Kowloon to trigger the Zorkin. So I'm going to go straight away and shotgun the Kowloon to place the Chuchi on field. And then I'll go GG targeting Chuchi, sending the Qinglong. Here, obviously, the discard in hand is quite blatantly the Zhuamu. I mean, I don't see why else you'd discard anything other than the Zhuamu. And then we can go Lulu targeting our Chuchi to send the other Qinglong for next turn. Very important step to take. And here you can do a couple things. I'm going to actually go ahead and add the Kirin, because as I said, we don't need Roshi in this combo. I'm going to go for a bit of a safer play. I'm going to go ahead and use Kirin, targeting the Lulu. And we'll go ahead and send a Chuchi, just to have that level modulation in case we need it, but I don't think we do. Or better, sorry, we do. I won't send another Qinglong because I want to have access to that later in the combo. I'm going to use the Chuchi to raise the level of the Lulu so I can go into Zorkin on my summon 4. So this is playing through the Nibiru, summoning the Zorkin, and then I can set the Qinglong to trigger the Zorkin to summon out the Crystal Wing. And then lastly, as I did say, you held the Itali, so now we can summon out an additional Lulu. And without having to access the Roshi at all, we can still go into our final Muddy Mud Dragon. Obviously the Itali goes to grave. And then Muddy Mud can finish off the combo to end on Kaliga. So I said you might have gotten bored of seeing the same end board, and you probably will have, because it's the same end board. And funnily enough, again, we get to add back our Lulu in end phase. I think this combo is nice because I displayed a way of using Itali not only as an extender, but as a means of completely altering your combo route. Again, we're ending on the Lulu in hand and the full end board. We also have a really easy way to turn off the Kaliga with our Qinglong, and we have a live Chuchi. We also played through an Nibiru because our Crystal Wing was indeed summon number 5. So that's it for all the combos I'll be displaying in this video. Hopefully they help you see exactly, or maybe not exactly, but giving you a scope of ideas of how to run this deck and how to access certain combo routes to access specific boards. I'm choosing to always end on the Kaliga Crystal board because that's, I think, what is best in the current format. You can, of course, go for other boards with the tech options I showed you in my deck profile video, and if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I'll put a link to that in the description. And hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something new about virtuals. See you all next time.